Hi, I'm Bresden O'Malley, and I'm here with my co-manager host, Rusty Tanton. And this is the One-on-One, a podcast for software engineers. We have a really awesome guest today, someone I actually met via our illustrious last guest, Toby Kraft. This is Jonathan Clanton, a senior recruiter for Xplor Technologies, and he's basically here to talk about some recruiting on his side of the fence, what a good resume looks like, the importance of how nice that resume should look, and also kind of his experience dealing with fake applicants. So I'm really excited. And Jonathan, this is your one-on-one. What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, I'm completely open, but definitely would love to talk about just from the recruiter's perspective, what I'm looking at, what we're looking at when we're looking at candidates, what we go through, what our day-to-day is like, at least from, my perspective. Like Toby mentioned last week, our last podcast, I can only speak for myself. I don't represent Xplor Technologies in this or even other recruiters because we all have different perspectives, but can give, my perspective of what I'm looking for and what helps me find you or find the candidate, especially as you mentioned in the sea of fake candidates and just so much going on.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm super interested to hear about the fake candidates personally.
Yeah, that's just going to be fun. But I do have a question kind of revolving around kind of the talent acquisition perspective and what you do on a day-to-day. Like, what does your day look like? We're coming to you for like 30 minutes and we're panicking and we've talked ourselves up that we're going to talk to the recruiter. Like, what does it look like from your side?
Yeah, and so no day looks the same. That's one of the kind of the exciting things about talent acquisition. And of course, each company is different. One thing I like about my company is that it has a startup feel to it, even though it's a large company. So I'm always working on a lot of different things. And I think that's one key thing to share with people from the recruiter perspective is that a lot of people think it's just looking at resumes and submitting to manager, and then that's all we're doing all day. No, we're coming up with a lot of processes. It's a process behind almost everything. From the conversation I have with you to how the interview goes to the offer, there's steps that I'm taking throughout this whole thing that just makes it more efficient. Make sure your candidate's having a good experience. Make sure we're following equal opportunity guidelines, making sure that we're giving people a fair chance in the interview process, and just making everybody's life easier, including the managers, yours, including other candidates. So in my day, I'm working with the different managers and consulting them. I'm also working on, we usually have different talent acquisition initiatives, whether it's our brand, working with our employee branding team on how we're going to brand, whether it's how do we make better templates or how do we, our company, and again, I don't want to speak on Xplor, but I work at Xplor. We're big on inclusion and diversity. So I'm one of the founding members of our Diversity and Inclusion Council. So I'm having initiatives with that in our ERG groups. But then talent acquisition has its own INDR, inclusion and diversity initiatives that we're working on. Whether it's how to source from underrepresented. When I say source, how do we find people? What are some of the processes there? And so there's different projects that we're working on there. And then on top of that, the priority is the recruiting. So going through resumes, at any point working on, it's the market changes. So right now I may have 5 to 10 different positions, but a lot of times we get up to 15 to 20 different positions. And they're all they're all mini projects. They're at different phases. Some hasn't even opened yet, and you're having meetings with the manager to understand, what are all the nuances? What do we really need to understand about this job, and where does it fit into the company? And is everything approved? Is budget approved? We don't want to run into any hiccups later on. So some are in that phase. Some are in the phase where I'm actively recruiting on it, and I'm working on, okay, how does my posting have the most impact? Do I post it in this location? Do I change some of the wording? Do I change some of the title? Does that make sense? And then some are in the phase where I'm actually sourcing and screening. And so trying to get new applicants, whether it's people applying, whether it's me using our tools to go out and find new applicants. And so, and that I could be going through a lot of resumes. Some roles you're going through a lot of resumes. Some roles you're actually trying to find people. So I'm on, in different tools we have. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sometimes you have to go deep. I'm everywhere. Where all the engineers? They're on GitHub. They're on Trailblazer. I feel positions where I can't even tell you how I found this person because I just was all over the internet. And so and some are in the interview phases, and some are in between where I'm still sourcing, but I'm still having people interview and let me consult the candidate. Let me tell you about what's happening next and get you scheduled. And again, there's a process in there. Hey, if I have a few candidates that are at their final interview, do I want to present any more new candidates? Or what if I come across somebody that's really good? Now that might slow everything else down. And then, negotiating, okay, talking through, okay, we're ready to make an offer. What do manager needs to know? What do they need to do? What do we need to do? And the amount of troubleshooting you're doing, it's a people's job and a systems job. So the amount of troubleshooting, nothing goes according to plan. And the day you're the busiest, the day that your applicant tracking system is acting funny or your team is acting funny and you're going to figure that out. Or, someone is really good, but they're going through an emergency and we have to kind of navigate that. Or, hey, we really like this person, but they just got an offer and we got to speed things up with the interview process. And so I know I can keep going, but it's long story short, it's a myriad of things happening in any given day. Yeah.
That's awesome. I actually have a follow-up. So you mentioned kind of creating a more inclusive posting for diversity. What does that look like? And what are some of the tips you have for creating a more inclusive post?
And so we have a tool that helps. A lot of the wording being, and I wish I could think of an example. Now we've done such a great job with our templates that we haven't had to dig into it as much. But it's certain wording that we might not be aware. It might be subconsciously. This is going to it's going to attract more males than females. It's going to make the environments there sound like it might be more of a masculine type environment. I wish I had it in front of me.
I just personally, that's happened to me many times. I've even had I've met someone who worked at a very big name company that I would have loved to work for, and he broke down the job for me, and I heard so many red flags that it was very masculine, and he didn't mean to do that. It was just the way he spoke about the company and how they viewed their teams. And I immediately was like, maybe I'll apply. Yeah. Right. It really does have a lot of impact on who applies.
Yeah.
And including things like, okay, in our postings, we have the different benefits. We have a little bit about the benefits. Saying things like, maternity leave or paternity leave as opposed to parental leave. And make sure we're including things in there that might be, again, more inclusive. Mention the I&D Council. And DEI, different. We call it inclusion and diversity because I believe it starts with being inclusive, having an environment that when you bring diverse people in, they actually feel included. Having wording, even how we say the benefits that will draw people in.
And Bresden, I actually have a follow-up for you along those lines. What are some of those red flags? Do you have a couple of examples of some of the red flags you've encountered that identify an environment as like a hyper-masculine environment? And then maybe, Jonathan, you can tell me if any of those resonate with you.
Yeah, I do think, first of all, on a posting that doesn't speak to diversity in any sense is a huge red flag immediately. A posting that really kind of signifies what a hard-working environment it is can be a weird turnoff where I feel like this might be very competitive. And for a female coming into the tech world, going up against a bunch of competitive men is a turnoff. And doesn't mean that that's what that company is. It's just the posting gives that feel. A lot of it is, things like, oh, we're looking for a people leader, but we expect you to do a coding exercise. That's what I found as a female is, and I've seen it before, where a male will be less drilled on technical than the female. So then the female needs to prove that they are like exceptionally technical, not just a capable person who can do the job. So any wording around kind of, how I want you to not be a coding EM, but you also have to take a technical is a weird red flag. I don't know. Those are some off the top of my head that I'm coming up with. I don't know if you've experienced that either, Jonathan.
And from a recruiter, that's a perspective I hadn't thought about when it comes to even the coding test. But like you said, if it's a people's leader, unless coding is heavily involved, like it's a 50-50 or it's a 40% of your job may still be coding. Like I said, we shouldn't have that in there anyway. But I never even thought about it from that perspective. But then,
it can be a little scary to know that I have to exceed everyone else's expectations.
Right. And your first point about, like I said, it's making it sound like it's, like I said, a competitive or hard working. If you read it and you get that feel like it's about to be the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
Like you said, that kind of gives that uber masculine feel to it.
Yeah, I love posts that mention empathy, that mention their values, or a creative outlook on something. Those are I find more enticing.
Or even like being mentioning how you're part of a team as as opposed to individual, like I said, competitive, but something that makes you feel included into the team and the organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so kind of a similar follow-up question, and I don't know if you've had any experience with this or not, but how has there been anything you've specifically put into a job description or any way that you've specifically dealt with candidates in calls or video calls or whatever else to sort of accommodate neurodivergence? So like one perspective I've personally think about, because my son's autistic, and he'll eventually someday be in the job market, is, things like some autistic folks don't like eye contact, for example. But then like in an interview process, they might be targeted for that, or they might kind of get dinged for that. Is there any kind of thought placed around that, or do you have any experience with that?
So we do train our managers here on implicit bias. Keep an eye out for that. So I'm neurodivergent as well, and so and maybe that's why I fell into engineering recruiting, because it seems like that's kind of the case with a lot of years. And so I noticed that I naturally do things that makes it easier because it relates to me. So even I have ADHD, so even having bullet points, and not having long paragraphs that are hard to read, having easy to read bullet points and spacing. I am, at least from my perspective, I do take into account, hey, that person might not have been the most bubbliest or the most friendliest. Could that just been the different person? Could have even just been outside. So on one aspect, it could have been neurodivergence, which of course I'm very conscious of.
Sure.
But it could have been a cultural thing where they're from. So I may dive more into just to kind of see if this person is just really being standoffish, or if, hey, that just may be a different personality. But I will say, from recruiting processes, I don't know that I've done anything or we've included anything into the process. So you're giving me more to add to our list of initiatives, and which is kind of cool. With our R&D council, one thing I like about it is we've been doing it for 2 years, and we don't focus on the same thing. We keep finding things to focus on. So now you just gave me our new focus on how to make sure it's.
Hey, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you just immediately are like, "Oh my God, we need to include this." Like, that's the mentality that I think we need in this
100%.
industry.
And that's one thing I like about where I am is we're in that place where we are continuing to build and grow and bring new ideas and I get a chance to. That's one of the things I love is I get a chance to have that impact on how we do things. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Toby had mentioned the mentorship program, and both Rusty and I were like, "That is amazing."
Oh yeah, which is it is really cool, but it kind of humbles you too because you realize these kids are like really smart. Like, like you're really ambitious. I don't know if I'm helping. Now I realize I haven't done enough in college.
It's like what are you, 18 and you've already done all this? Yeah.
Right.
What was I doing when I was 18? I'm not podcast fodder for sure. Not this podcast anyway.
No, that I love that. We only get to see you for 30 minutes while you're assessing whether we'd fit with the company or the hiring manager might be interested in us. And so we don't get that side, right? So that's one of the reasons I love having these conversations and just getting your perspective on this. What have you ever experienced, like some misconceptions about what you do that is completely false?
Oh yeah, and like you said, one of the and this is why I like having this and having these conversations, because if people haven't been recruiting before, they don't really know, and honestly, it could be different for every recruiter. So they may have been told about what one recruiter does, but it's a little bit different for us. But there are a few misconceptions that I normally see. One is that, and when your guest Elena you guys talked about the ATS. One is that there's the ATS will spit out your resume or spitting out resumes if you don't have keywords. A lot of people feel like, okay, I'm putting this work in and my resumes is not even making it past the ATS. From my experience, it doesn't do that based off of your resume. It isn't saying, hey, you don't have these keywords, so we're going to spit your resume out. It may rate it. It may say, hey, this is, based off of the criteria we put into the ATS, it may say, hey, this candidate may be 100% or 80% to what you said you're looking for. I don't use it that much anyway. I'm going to go through the resume more than I'll trust that. What may knock you out, and this is something people definitely should be aware of, is the pre-screening questions, the questions that you answer when you're doing your application. Make sure you're paying attention to those. I've had people reach out to me like, why did I get rejected so fast? Did you even look at my resume? I'm like, I didn't. Who are you? And I go and look at their profile, and the question said, hey, will you require sponsorship? We aren't able to sponsor. And you said yes. And so that was the person who asked. And so, yes, I'm able to go and do something then, but how many people have been rejected? They never made it to me because we might have questions that are in the pre-screen that are knockout questions. Hey, we need 5 years of, which typically a lot of recruiters are going away from using years of experience. But just an example, may say need 5 years of experience. You said, yeah, actually, do you have 5 years experience? Or you say you have 2 or 3, it may automatically knock you out. That's more likely than you not having the words in your resume.
So real quick, I've heard a couple of recruiter stories where they actually also use those pre-screenings to kind of like prove you're a person and you're actually interested. And there's been a lot of really funky responses to those where like have you ever been like rickrolled or gotten really dumb pre-screening questions or very obviously from GPT, something like that?
So at my current role, no, because it's some parameters behind our questions. So we can't ask specific questions for each role. It's pretty much questions for all the companies in the US, but I could definitely see that in past roles where you can ask that, where you can ask, you can put in your question, and it's not super structured field, so you can go by their answer. But I have done things also like, if you read this, put this in the
yes,
to see if people, like you said, to see if people are really reading it.
Yeah. You put like the word zebra finch in the middle of it, and it's like, right. Okay, put zebra finch here if you actually read the job description.
Exactly, or put moonshot if you're actually reading. And I might not always put it at the bottom, because I understand, hey, you're going through a lot of applications, you're not getting through everything. But I might put it in a place where, this is something that you should read if you're actually interested, or if you're actually a person.
Yeah.
So yeah, things like that.
What other aspects of AI actually integrate into your day at this point?
It's pretty cool. So there's a couple things. So one, I'm now starting to use it on Teams, because all my interviews are on Teams. So it helps to summarize because I'm taking notes, but just in case I miss something, or even in meetings that I'm having with managers, it helps with that. I know a lot of recruiters use it for templates and outreach. I don't use it for that, just because I have really good templates that I already like. But you can use AI to draft up a message when you're reaching out to people. Now, we have a tool that utilizes AI. I'm not sure how it does it, but one thing it does scrape, it finds candidates and makes a profile for them from all different sites. So if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on GitHub, you're on these different sites, is able to
Oh, wow. That is neat.
And it uses AI so now that one, their template does have AI, and it's a pretty good template. So I do stick to that one. Sometimes I'll read it and do that. But then it also creates a sequence where, hey, if you haven't responded, in a few days, hey, just follow up email, and which actually works. A lot of people end up responding on like that 4th or 5th email. So that's one way. And your question is how I'm utilizing it, or how
it integrates into your day. Yeah.
Now, one of the things, it has made my job harder in that it's already an unfortunate market for people that's looking for work. There's a lot of people applying, and then there's a lot of people using AI. But then also, just one thing is, I talk to all these candidates that use AI to make their resume and know how to say enough to get past me, and they also know how to use AI and Google and when they code, which is great. You don't always have to just code from complete scratch. Knowing how to search is important. But then when we have those roles where, hey, we need you to understand the fundamentals of coding, you've gotten all the way to the second round interview before we realize that. And I'm thinking, okay, we got all these candidates and we're doing good and all this looks great. And all of a sudden I normally could submit 6 or 7 people to get 2 or 3 interviews to get one hire. All of a sudden I'm getting to 20 people, and they keep coming back like, hey,
wow.
They had this, they were good at this, but when we dove into that, and it's on their resume. So, and their resumes look, and that's one thing where it does make it tougher, because usually let's say I have 100 resumes, there's a lot I can weed out immediately because I can just see your resume and weed out. But then it's what you would think is a great thing, but it's not, is when all of them look great. And now I got to figure out who's real and who's not, and go through all 100 of these applications. So you see that, and then like Elena mentioned, you see that where people are, which makes sense, where you're applying to use AI to apply to all these jobs. If you're going to do that, by the time I reach out to you and we schedule an interview, by the time you have the interview, do some research and make sure this is something that you want to do and you know about the company. Because like Elena mentioned, if we get to interviewing and you're not even sure, you don't even know anything about the company, the best candidates are the ones that this is what they look for. This type of company, what we're doing is what they're looking for. It fits what they've been. It might either fit what they've been doing or the direction they want to take their career. And so this is a fit skill wise. This is a fit environment wise. This is a fit motivational wise. Those are the best candidates. If you're just we get to the call and what do you guys do? Are you I ask you, hey, what do you know about us? And it clearly you just this was the interview that came up. okay, that's already a red flag. So that is one of the things you see where it's, you post an engineering job in the past, in a week, you might have 30, 40 applicants. I've had one where I knew better. I posted it on a Friday, got back Monday and had 300 on the dot.
Oh my gosh.
And I, in my mind, I was going to check it Saturday, and I should have known better that if it was urgent, I wasn't going to open my laptop. And had about 300 applicants.
That's intense. So when you have 300, what do you do?
So, do you mind if we dive into the fake candidate conversation?
I would love to
Let's
go
do
into
it,
the
yeah.
fake candidate conversation.
I've spent days just going through resumes, and it yields nothing. So I've had to find ways to stop wasting time. And so if I do see a lot, I look for patterns and application patterns because of the impact it can have on real candidates and impact how it impacts them. If I see that as soon as I posted it, there were about 50, 60, 100, 50, 60, or a ton of people applied this one day. And I wish I could see the times, but let's say I go back and check it an hour later, and all these people just came in this hour. I'm at the point, unfortunately, where I'm gonna assume these aren't real. Let me scrap it and start over. And you want to be able to go in and check, but it's got to the point where it's gotten really time consuming. And because even if you get through those, so you have that part, right? So the admin of going through all these resumes now. So if I post it and an hour later it's maybe 10 candidates, 10, 13 candidates. Now I feel pretty good that these are actually real candidates. And so I feel a lot better about it. But, so you have different phases where it really gets time consuming. So you have that part. And so also now, because you have fake candidates, instead of me being able to just look at your resume for 5-6 seconds, decide if I'm going to continue looking at your resume or move out, I now have to do some research. And research your resume. And so before I go into that, let me back up into when we talk about fake candidates, what I've been seeing. So yeah, you have, like I said, the AI stuff with candidates, and those not necessarily fake, and those don't necessarily rule you out. There's been candidates. It's been a thing from, I don't know if it's, well, I definitely read on Singapore, like North Korea, some Middle East, where the candidates the people are actually not sitting in this country. They're sitting in those countries, and it's just like it's more than two different batches, but some to make it simple, it's like two batches. There's the people in the Middle East, so that's been going on, and in certain skill sets that's been going on. That's where you might put certain things in the posting to see if this person actually applied and just in their resume, everything. And then you're looking at, you say you're in New York. Hey, how's the weather? And they give you a really generic answer. Or you hear or see somebody in the background. It's always telltale signs whether it's you start off with the screen off and I have to actually, everything, again, all my meetings are teams because of fake candidates. You start with the screen off. I have to ask you, hey, can you turn the screen on? You start talking and the words clearly aren't matching the person talking. That's a telltale sign. I start getting you talking and all your answers seems very scripted. So I start throwing you questions that's off script. And just to like, hey, you couldn't prepare for this question. And then it gets generic again. So those are telltale signs, and those were kind of easy. What I started seeing towards the end of last year was, but apparently this has been happening. I started seeing this on as I researched it again from like Singapore, North Korea, the different countries there where, and I don't know all the reasons. Some of it was information, being able to get into companies, get information. But this was tough because they'll use Americanized name. They'll use, which made it easier once I started realizing it. But they use Americanized name. They may use a Americanized LinkedIn. But it's kind of some of the same things. But I've had times where I've set up a week worth of interviews, and all of them are fake. And my whole week is nothing to show.
Oh my gosh.
And so, and here's some funny stories. And this is where, especially when I first started, it gets obvious. I'm out of Atlanta. Atlanta is I don't know the numbers, but it is a high Black population.
Mm-hmm.
So a candidate from this happened twice, from Atlanta, name was Jamal. Jamal, I would say Jackson. It was definitely clearly, let's be real, I'm going to expect this to be a Black person. But I also looked him up on LinkedIn. Clearly a Black person. An Asian guy comes on, your name is Jamal from Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it was another one that was very like, okay, this is a Black name. And then it was funny because you would see it per demographic. So whatever name they're grabbing it from that area, because it had a candidate in Texas named Carlos Gonzalez or something like that. And my thing is, and this is the giveaway. Okay, and again, I try to put myself in the shoes. It might be reasons why this might be a real person, and you feel bad, especially because again, this is affecting candidates that may be real, and we got to figure out if you're real. Like I said, it impacts candidates because you have that, but I have to do my research on your profile before I reach out to you. And so one thing I do is look up your number and look it up on things that check fraud scores. And so if it's a voice over IP, that's going to be, a red flag number one. But I also understand people use Google Voice, people use voice over IP. I've hired somebody who had a voice over IP. So that's going to be red flag number one, especially if the voice over IP location is not in the location where you are. Or I'm looking at your resume. You've never been in New York. At least nothing here shows you live in New York the last 10 years. And your resume say based out of Los Angeles. So, okay, now I'm look further. Okay, now let me find your LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, and again, this is where it affects people, that at this point, I'm ruling you out. Which sucks because there may be people that just don't have a LinkedIn. But at that point, it's kind of two strikes. Or well, at that point, it's automatic. Out voice over IP, no LinkedIn. So then I go to your link. So let's say you do have a LinkedIn, but there's no picture. Okay, but then also I'm looking at your LinkedIn. Is this a LinkedIn of a real person? Okay, no postings, no activities, 30 followers. Okay, now, unfortunately, at this point, you're out. Because I've had too many times where I've try to be empathetic, understanding, and I'm like, why? How did you get on my calendar? How did I waste my time here? And so, yeah, I employ everybody to make sure you're active on your LinkedIn. I graduated college in 2009. If you graduated around me when LinkedIn definitely was getting going, it would be weird to me that you're in a computer-based job and you haven't done anything on LinkedIn. But I also understand, especially engineer, somebody been doing well, I don't have any reason for LinkedIn. But that's why I would say I employ people to just make sure you're active, because now if I'm looking for you and I can't find you, now I'm wondering, okay, is this a real person? And unfortunately, I probably have ruled out people that might have been legit because they just had too many red flags of not being a real candidate.
That's crazy. Do you have any stories around like actually having an interview with a fake candidate?
But there was a candidate, when I'm interviewing him, I'm like, he is really pretty. Like, he's really like, his face is like pretty, like pristine. There's no flaws. And he got this smile. I'm like, is this a robot? Is this a person? And but then it was odd. And this is what's scary, because as technology gets better, it probably will get better at things like this. But he was clearly giving me, even his feeling was not natural. I would ask a question about, good question. And I'm like, okay. And so then I talked to the manager. I was like, if this person's real, seems like a really good candidate, but he's either a robot or really weird. And so the manager was like, okay, let me speak to him. And the manager was pretty smart. He asked him about a painting on behind him. And he was like, he asked 3 or 4 times and the guy would never turn around to look at it.
Smart.
And that's the only one where I've had where the person interviewing the candidate was clearly all AI.
Man, that's weird.
That is super weird.
Now fake candidates, like I said, while I'm interviewing them, I'm careful not to. I don't call them out because how do you tell somebody, hey, you're not really a real candidate? And I honestly, I don't always end it right away because I don't want to rule out a good person. So I will keep going to see until it gets to the point where it's like, okay, clearly. But one person, I said, hey, this is not you on your LinkedIn picture. And he said, oh, I cut my hair. I was like, this is a totally different face.
Nice haircut. Yeah.
Right. And even then I was trying to give him benefit of doubt, like, hey, maybe this is an older picture. I'm like, no, this is not you. And I said, hey, and I had to be honest with him, hey, just with everything going on, with what we're dealing with fake candidates, unfortunately, it does raise some concern, so I won't be able to move forward with you. And he said, okay. And that's the thing, I do notice that some of them, they make sense that I'm sensing it. So then they I'm like, hey, do you have any questions? So I'm moving things along faster because now I don't want to waste 30 minutes. I'm moving things along faster. And maybe they can tell because then I'm like, hey, do you have any questions? Like, nope, I'm good. And then they're just ready to go. So either maybe they could tell or they couldn't tell, but they didn't. They were just trying to get whatever job they can anyway. So they'll just be rushing, talking to everybody. Oh yeah, I had a candidate the other week where I knew the hurricane didn't affect them because of what part of the country they were in. The hurricanes didn't affect them. And I was like, man, did you guys? And I look up and I'll start looking up people the weather in the area before I have the conversation because we're remote. People are all over. And I gave them a fake weather. And I was like, hey, did you guys get? It was sunny for them. Like, did you guys get rain and everything? He was like, yeah. But he didn't elaborate or anything. He just said, yeah. And then whenever I would ask him a question, he would clearly pause, like he's waiting for somebody to give him the answer. Or and again, I'm giving benefit of that, like, hey, maybe they're thinking, but I'm like, okay, that was a specific question about you. Why did you have to pause for the answer? And so I wrapped that one up about 10 minutes. Don't give them the whole spiel and everything, wrapped up in 10 minutes because strike 1 was the weather. Strike 2, I actually what you know about the company, you didn't know anything. And then strike 3, where every time I ask you a question, there's a delay. And that was one thing I had to realize too. You know, again, giving people benefit of doubt. Hey, if there's a delay, maybe there's technical issues.
Yeah.
But we're a remote job. Even if you're having those kind of technical issues, maybe this is not a fit for you either, along with the other red flags. So yeah, I did. So a couple years ago we used agencies. And one of the candidates made it through the agency, but then when they interviewed with us, told the manager, "Hey, I'm not this person." They tried to pay me and hire me to say I was interviewing for this person.
What?
And that's the whole thing of now everything is we're all our interviews are going to be video interviews when I talk to them. But they're like, that's not. They hired me to say I was this person. And so that batch of fake candidates, I think I understand a little bit more because from my agency recruiting days where, you know, they might be on a visa, but the company's not hiring visa. So then they'll say there's somebody else, or they're just looking to it's the companies that hold the visas, they make money off of their visas. So the more people they get hired, the more money they make. So now they're just trying to get people in and they have people interviewing. I've had that in the agency where, and this was the first time it got me, and looking back at it, it was so obvious. Interviewing, and then when I go to get all this information because of the offer, first I realized, like, hey, this guy's kind of young to have this amount of experience.
What was he like? He was 3 and he was coding? Yeah.
Right. Wait, when did all this? Okay. And
then when I do COBOL, like, that's not true.
Right, I did COBOL in 2020.
Yeah.
And then I called and I was trying to get his information. It seemed like I thought it was just technical difficulties, but he would have one answer but it would be muffled and it was a lot of noise. And I was like, there's somebody else there. And so he would tell me one answer, and then he'd come back, oh, sorry, my birthday is this year. When I asked him about it, I was like, hey, how you have this many years of experience? You started here. And then muffle. Oh, sorry, I have this many years of experience. And through all that, it got by me. And this was agency recruiting, so I didn't work for the company that replaced them. But we would go visit. I would go visit, and the manager kept trying. You could tell they were trying to hint at, this is not the person that interviewed. They're like, hey, it did, and they kept hinting at it like, this. We don't know if this is the same. He's not. He doesn't have the skills he had. Okay, you want us to take him off, and they didn't want to keep him. I guess for I don't know why, but that's when I realized, oh wait, these are fake candidates that these companies are trying to get in. Is more money.
Wow.
Oh my gosh,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Man, these stories are blowing my mind. I can't believe you spoke to an AI. I'm going to be really honest. I'm like, that's our clickbait title. Let me tell you.
But it scared me because I'm like, if it gets better at the sounding better, like I said, yeah, great question. I'm like, that wasn't that great of a question. How was your day?
Okay, so from your perspective, you are dealing with not only can you not leave a job posting open very long because you get 300 resumes to go through, you're also dealing with fake applicants. So really, you're on this like playing a clue detective game, trying to discover if the person is even real before deciding to move forward just to call them. What are some of the things you're looking at when you're looking through those resumes? Since you said it's very pattern based, but what happens when those hundreds all look good? What happens with that?
Yeah, and one thing I would recommend to anybody is think about the readability of your resume, and not readability in the sense of, is like I said, PDF, or will it get through the system and can it read it? But how fast can I see what your experience? Where it, now that we're using AI, there's good and bad, and don't use AI to create a resume that has experience that you don't have. But where you can use AI is to help it tailor your resume to match the job description and what we're looking for. As we mentioned, looking at your resume a few seconds before deciding what, if I'm going to continue to look. And so it is about, formatting and move your important experience to the top, make it readable, and think about it from perspective of, I'm not an engineer. The recruiter's looking at it is not an engineer. Don't hide. If I'm looking for a Java developer and you have Java experience, don't just list the framework or tool that use Java without ever listing Java. Assume I don't know anything about it. But I think formatting and how you do your resume is the most important for me to even see within those few seconds. And I can show you, and Rusty, if you can pull it up,
I'll pull it up. All right, it's up now.
The importance of formatting. This is, I don't know, everybody's seen this before. This is a fake resume made by, I think his name was Jerry Lee, that he was trying out, and it got tons of recruiter responses. And I'll be honest with you, it would have gotten my attention too. I probably wouldn't do it. From the outset, this looks great.
It does.
This is back in my agency days, we would help format your resume before we submit it to the company, to highlight the things that you have that relates to the job, and to make it, again, readable, easy for somebody who's not in your field to read. So having, hey, your experience, I'm looking at how much experience do you have? So I say over here, okay, been here 2 years. So at least 2 years there. This here, okay, was a product manager. Let me look further into it. And so I initially saw this resume on TikTok. It was a TikTok clip about, where he talked about it, and he said, it shows how people were frustrated because it shows how little recruiters actually read your resume, and it feels like they're wasting their time. And it's interesting because I get the perspective. The good thing of my job is I get the perspective of the recruiter, I get the perspective of the job applicant, and the other job applicants, of everybody in the business. So, the there were people in the comments saying, "Why recruiters not taking more time to read our resumes? Isn't that your job? Why aren't you reading resumes?" And as I mentioned earlier, how much we have to do. So if I have 100 resumes, I'm not spending 2-3 minutes to go through every line. I'm looking for something. I've met with the manager. I found out, hey, what are the top 3 things this person must have in their resume for it even worth our time? So I'm looking for that. Hey, we're looking for strong Java experience. Look for somebody that might have converted from a monolith to broken down from monolith to microservices. We're looking for somebody that might have used AngularJS on the front end. So I'm looking for those to decide if I should continue looking down your resume. So this candidate here, I don't even know if you noticed the name. It's Kiss My Nuts or These Nuts. Yeah, it's KISMMA. Middle initial D, last name NHUHTS. And it would have got me because the name isn't the first thing I'm looking at. And even if I saw it, I'd be like, okay, I'll figure out how to pronounce it later. Let me see if they even know if they have the experience. And so then I look at it and I see, okay, been a product manager at least 5 years, 5 years here as a product manager. Maybe that's how their team is. Everywhere is different, but
that is weird.
Yeah, but the ways I see it clearly what you're doing. And if I'm looking for certain things, I'm seeing that. What I didn't see is train team with achieving project goals on time and under budget by hosting orgies. Successfully
It says that.
a new feature on Google Photos that utilize visual similarity and machine learning of reducing photo grouping times of my anus.
But you notice it's like kind of buried in the resume, right? Because like the first section of the resume looks like almost totally legit and boring, other than that maybe one weird thing about the product manager managing engineers, but like it's very straight-laced in the first one. But then you get down to that second Google section and it's like orgies and anuses and all of this stuff.
And the point is, before seeing that, I've already decided I want to talk to this person. And now I really want to talk to the person because what? Like, what are you doing? But that's one of the key things is moving your experience to the top. One of the things I used to do when formatting resumes when in my agency days is if the job says looking for, managed 15 plus, looking for somebody that's managed a team with 10 plus, and in agile environments, and maybe Scrum Master implement Agile. Okay, so what I might do is take this bullet point and just move it to the top right here. And again, having your relevant experience, because and one thing you guys talked about, a lot of people talked about is how many pages. Is it more than one page? And for me, it more than one page doesn't rule you out. But I'll be honest with you, I'm probably not going further than here to decide if I'm going to continue looking. So
I'm just reading some of these bullet points. I'm sorry, they're a riot.
Right, which is crazy because even looking at it now, I still don't see those crazy things until I actually go through each.
Yeah, it's just so crazy. Like all the weird nuances of how difficult it is to find a worthy candidate when, again, we're over here trying to apply and it's like, why can't I get any traction? And there's so much you're going up against on both sides.
I mean, how do you compete with these nuts, right? Like, it's...
I don't know if you mean that and I tell my friends, unfortunately, it is luck and timing, and figuring out how to better your chances of luck, because it's things could be, I typically submit, once I get to 6 or 7 active candidates that I'm interviewing that are submitted to the manager, I'm probably not going to submit anymore unless some start falling out. So let's say day one, I get this many, and you're a great candidate, and you apply a few days later, you might have been the 7th or 8th candidate, but I haven't even gotten there yet. Or vice versa. I posted a job, but I'm so busy on these other jobs, I didn't get a chance to start on it right away. And so it might not have been the first few, it might have been random. And I've gotten to, some active candidates, and, at that point, I never even got to and ideally I do want to go through all the resumes, but it also depends on the timing and if I really get a chance. And again, if we're further down the process, do I want to introduce more people into the process?
Mm-hmm.
I may want to reach out to you to pipeline you, or to have you in my pipeline for future opportunities. But then even that is dependent on how can I prioritize pipelining at that point. So, it is about increasing your chances. So a couple of things I think that helps is reaching out if you can reach out on LinkedIn to the recruiter, to the hiring. I'm not one of those recruiters that would get mad if you reach out to the hiring manager. Maybe it's different if you're an agency recruiter. For me, I'm just trying to fill the job. So if the manager comes back to me and say, hey, this person reached out to me on LinkedIn, that doesn't bother me. Now, the key thing about reaching out on LinkedIn is, again, the readability, and remember, everybody has a million spinning plates. So how is your resume how is your message worth time? A lot of people make the mistake of saying, hey, do you have anything that matches my resume? And I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm coming from the perspective, I got a job to fill. Do you match my job? I won't have time to look at your resume, go through our tracking system and see if anything matches that. One of the best things I saw a candidate do was they looked at the job description and made bullet points of their experience that related to the job. So, and now, of course, it's also contingent on you having the experience, having good experience. So I look at this message and, oh, wow, you have the experience. Well, you just made my life easier. Of course, I'm going to reach out to you. Instead of going through 100 resumes, here's somebody here who's shown me in bullet points. And it doesn't have to be in bullet points, but it does have to be obvious. Here's my experience that relates to this job, not just here's my experience. That relates to what you're looking for. So that's one way. I know some advice is, if a job is open, a certain amount of time, don't waste your time applying. But again, it's luck and it's random. You can apply, and it might be, again, I might not have got a chance to get to it, or we might have gone through a batch of candidates, none of them worked out. So I'm back to looking at the applicants. Networking, as much as you can, network in your field. So they talk about the hidden job market, and there's not as much of a hidden job market, at least from my perspective, that as much as people think, where there's all these jobs that we're hiring that never make it to public. Not necessarily, especially from our organization. And if your companies want to be EOC compliant, you are posting all your jobs. There may be a job that we have somebody in mind, or somebody that, and this is where the networking comes into play. You may say, hey, this is somebody I met at a convention. I really like it. But at the same time, we're still going to post it at least 3 days. Now, it may speed things up. I may go through, we're going to post it. I'm going to see if we got anybody that's better. And so the first batch of people, we'll send them and let them interview and see if they're better. So at that point, it did speed things up, but it wasn't a job that was already this person's. But we are looking, okay, they got to beat this person, unfortunately. Totally. So then that part where met them at a convention, and I actually see it more in director level roles or higher level roles. But that networking where, hey, this person here, and when you network, this might be talking out both sides of my mouth. I'm full of mixed messages.
It's all good.
I was impressed that this person was able to impress this manager so much at this convention that they did think of them later, and they turned out to really be a good candidate. I don't remember if they got the job or not. But it's hard if you're going to be a stranger on LinkedIn and then expect them to refer you like they know you. They can't really speak for you as well. So that's one of those tough things where reaching out to the manager on LinkedIn, that's why it's important to show where your experience match. Because if you're just reaching out to them and then want them to act like they've been on you and to refer you, that's tougher. So you want to be conscious of that. You want to be conscious of, just because you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn or a manager on LinkedIn, don't mean all of a sudden you're in. They don't know you. But oh wait, now you're at least in consideration. You caught my attention and gotten to the front top of the pile because you have this transferable or relatable.
Right. It also kind of goes back to like, you've already proven you're at least a human.
Right. And you're proven. So, we talked about different fits, skill-wise fit, motivational fit, but it's also show your research, your attention to detail. It shows the type of worker you are as well.
Yeah.
Which caught my eye. The fact that they even thought of that or did that, I'm like, okay, that's a little bit next level.
It's really nice because that's a transferable skill to the job itself, because especially in asynchronous work, if like everyone has so many spinning plates, as you said, if I need to reach out to like some senior developer who's slammed and I don't give this developer every piece of information they need to answer my question, I'm not going to get an answer. He's not going to prioritize because it's like, oh, hey, Jonathan, and then wait for an answer. That's just there's nothing proactive about that, right? So the fact that candidate was proactive enough to go, what would make Jonathan's life easier, means that skill will transfer to the actual job.
Do you have any final thoughts you want to leave folks with?
One, and of course, this is a personal approach, but one approach as you're looking for jobs, as you're applying to jobs, is like Preston said, how do you make it easier for that person to see you and help you and see your experience and also to share that information over to somebody as well. So the easier you make it, the easier they can fit you into the spinning plates. It's easy to say, I've seen people out of work for over a year. Mm-hmm. Don't get just, I don't want to say don't get discouraged. That's easy to say. Don't get discouraged, but it is, sometimes it is that one. And also not only that one look at the draw, but that impression you make with someone. Yeah. Maybe you didn't get the job this time, but and I know we're running out of time, but there was one candidate. I want to be quick that we had not an entry level role, but it didn't require much experience. And so when it doesn't require much experience, I'm looking at soft skills of ambition, approach, hunger, and what stood out for her was her LinkedIn. Even when we talked, she was passionate, but you can see her passion in her LinkedIn, where it had this personable approach, but it also she's going through all this different coding and different stuff. So she doesn't have the skill for the job, but she clearly has. She's showing me something, and she has the mindset that fit this team. Now, unfortunately, it came down. She didn't get the job, but to this day, if I get anything that's remotely close, I'm reaching out to her. And so that's some of the things where it might not have got it now, but did you set yourself up for the future? But that's why I would say it's a lot. Recruiters have a lot of different spinning plates, a lot of different things going on. The simpler you can make it, the easier you can make it, the better chances you have of getting seen.
That's just amazing closing thoughts. And this has been a really fun conversation, Jonathan. Thank you so much for joining us. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you guys. As you can see, I love talking about this stuff. So definitely.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Really appreciate you.
Thank you guys for inviting me. I don't know how many times I sit here and have conversations with my friends or conversations even in my head about what's happening, and just to be able to share it. I do appreciate it.
Excellent.
Awesome. Anytime, Jonathan. Have a good night, everyone.
Later, guys. See ya.
Opinions expressed on the one-on-one belong only to us and our guests, not to any of our respective employers. You can find us on the web at the1on1.show. You can also find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube by searching for The One-on-One. Please rate and review us on those services. It helps us out a lot. The One-on-One wouldn't be possible without listeners like you and a fantastic community of people who help us in ways large and small. Special thanks to Cameron Cooper, who helps us with marketing, Michael Ducharme, who created our awesome bumper music, and Elena Sayage, who has been a huge booster from day one. Thanks for listening.